It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. Sign up for free, get yourself a free audiobook. Tonight, this is one of our special shows that we're doing pre-recorded that will be in our members section. And then it'll go into rotation. It'll be playing on CBS Radio, Para X, 7 p.m. Saturday nights, late night in the Midlands on Tuesday afternoons at 4. FPRN every day, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Penny Entertainment on Blog Talk Radio on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. And let's see, who else would carry it? I think that's about it. But it'll also be up on iHeart and Spreaker after it plays in our members section. So today we have with us Cathy Scott, who's the author of all these different books: Murder of a Mafia Daughter, the Suspicions Robert Durst Murdered Susan Berman, the life and tragic death of Susan Berman, Murder in Beverly Hills, the mob-style execution of Susan Berman, her crime boss father, and the deadly secret she took to her grave. Another book is Hot-Blooded, Cold Crime, the true crime box set. The Millionaire's Wife, the true story of a real estate tycoon, his beautiful young mistress, and a marriage that ended in murder. And another book is Death in the Desert, the true story of money, murder, and mystery in Sin City. Cathy, are you there?
I am here.
Thank you so much for coming on, Cathy, especially at the last second. I just invited you this morning. Okay, and I know you did another interview earlier before this. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
So can you tell the audience a little bit about your background and all these different books you've written and stuff?
Well, I'm a journalist by trade, and I was a reporter in San Diego and moved to the Las Vegas Sun in the 90s, early 90s. And in 1996, Tupac Shakur was shot on my watch. And he was a hip-hop artist and at the top of, sort of peaked at that point, and he also was had been in some movies. So I wrote a book about him. That was my first book. Made the LA Times bestseller list, and then 6 months later, rapper Biggie Smalls was killed, and I wrote a book about that, and I've been writing books ever since.
Yeah, my audience is very familiar with Tupac and the Tupac murder and stuff like that. We had John Potash on a couple of times.
Wow.
Yeah. And what about the other one, the Sin City murder? Is that about the Binion murder?
Well, it wasn't a murder. He died of a self-induced overdose. I sat through both trials. But, yeah, that was Death in the Desert, and that was made into a film that should be out this year. And I sat through both trials and walked into the trial thinking that someone had murdered him, and I walked out knowing that someone had not. So it was a fascinating case to follow it, and I followed that for a newspaper, and then turned that into a book as well. And
you were living, because I live in here in Vegas right now. So you were living in Vegas at that time? Because it says also
I was living in. Well, I was living in Las Vegas. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because I saw also too. You were a professor over at University of Nevada.
Yeah, I taught journalism for 5 years, and really, really enjoyed that. And then in September, August of 2005, Hurricane Katrina happened, and an animal rescue group asked me to write for their magazine and website and go down there for 2.5 weeks. And I stayed for 4 months, and that turned into the book Pawprints of Katrina. And I left my teaching position at that point to stay down in the Gulf.
So pretty much you left a really good job to go down and rescue animals.
Well, I rescued and I wrote about them. I mean, I was down there to write about them, but, I was in boats, I was on foot, so when you're in the midst of it, you end up doing both. Ended up reuniting because I was writing about the animals, so I ended up reuniting with a lot of them with their people. So it was quite an experience being down there for that long. And I love New Orleans, I love the people, and I love their pets.
Yeah,
and then,
I've only visited.
Yeah, and then I'm sorry?
I was saying I've only visited a couple of times. It is a beautiful town, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a city. I just every time I fly into New Orleans, I look down and it feels like I'm going home. I mean, it was quite a time spent there, and I've got friends I made for life who were volunteers down there, so it was quite an experience. But my love is I love writing about crime. I was I'm a journalist by trade. I was a crime reporter, and I moved from Las Vegas in last year, December. Moved back to San Diego, where I'm from. So I was in Las Vegas for 21 years.
Oh, very nice. Okay, yeah, we moved here in 2000. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I says I moved out here in 2000.
Did you?
From New York, yeah. I live in Henderson.
Yeah, you're. You live in Henderson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was out there. 2004, so I beat you by a decade or so. But
okay.
Yeah, I was there 21 years, 1 month, and 4 days. But who's counting? But
yeah.
I'm happy to be back in California. It's where my roots are, and I had Las Vegas was very good to me, but it was time to come home. So I'm covering a California case here right now in 2 murders in Torrey Pines Beach, and they happened in '78 and '84. So it's nice that I'm here to be able to research that and interview people.
Well, okay. Now, I saw today you were announced this book you'd written about Robert Durst.
Yes.
And this has to be one of the most fascinating stories in the world, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, he's a character.
Yeah.
He's a character. And Susan Berman, who was charged with murder, she was a character, too. They were attracted to each other, as friends, but they were, they had a bond.
Yeah, when I was researching today, I saw an old clip of Susan Berman, and I recognized her. I guess when she wrote the book, her Mafia book, Daughter book, whatever tour she was doing.
Easy Street.
Yeah. So, okay, now how did you get involved in this, Robert Durst?
Well, I was a reporter at the Las Vegas Sun, and I knew who Susan was because of this A&E special that she was a writer on. I almost met her. There was a VIP party, and journalists were invited, and Susan was there, but I didn't go at the last minute. But when I can almost remember the day I learned about her murder, and I followed it, and it just was, it seemed such a sad story. Here she was, a gal who was raised in Las Vegas as basically mob royalty, and her father died during surgery when she was 12, and then her mother committed suicide when she was 13. She was later convinced that the mob killed her, and she lost her parents at a young age. And then Susan ended up, she became a journalist, went to journalism school at UC Berkeley, and it's like her feet were firmly planted in Las Vegas. She never got over it. And so the more I started researching and looking into the case, the more I covered it, and then I wrote a book. And Robert Durst is very much a part of Murder of a Mafia Daughter because he was such good friends with Susan. Now, of course, he's accused of killing her.
How did those two meet?
They both were students. He was an upper graduate, and Susan was an undergraduate at UCLA. And they met on the quad, on campus. And just instantly, their first conversation included how they lost their parents. He lost his mother at age 7, and Susan at 12 and 13, both parents. And she was raised in wealth. And Durst came from a very wealthy family. the Durst organization. They built half of Manhattan, and they just were fast friends. And she always referred to Bobby as the brothers she never had.
Very interesting.
I call him Bobby Durst. That's what she used to call him, but Robert is what everybody knows him by.
So now, why don't you tell the audience the whole story behind Robert Durst and all the different allegations going on with this guy?
Well, the boy's been he's accused of 3 murders. First in 1982, his wife Cathy Durst, who he married, I believe, in '73, and they and then she turned up missing in '82. Susan, she went on from UCLA. Susan went on to UC Berkeley, went to J School, journalism school there, and then had a good career. Was hired by the San Francisco Examiner. Wrote some very high profile stories. Freelanced them for a magazine. Got the attention of other media, and she was hired by New York Magazine. Moved to New York, and it always felt as if she had followed Robert Durst there, because he went back home to Manhattan. So she lived on the Upper East Side, and at the time, Bobby Durst's wife, Cathy, disappeared in 1982. Susan became his spokesperson. And so she fielded telephone calls from the media. He didn't want to talk to the media, so she did. She was his biggest defender. And because of his name, of course, the case was very high profile. And then Susan ended up back in California and moved to Los Angeles. And in 2000, she she didn't. Let me backtrack. And so the 1982 case, state police were relooking at it. New York police were relooking into the investigation of Cathy Durst's disappearance, and police leaked to the media that they wanted to interview Susan Berman. Robert Durst got antsy and ended up in Galveston Bay on the lam, living as a woman, a deaf mute woman, and moved in next door to a man by the name of Morris Black. So Susan was the second one. He got antsy. The motive is, police believe the motive is that Susan was going to spill the beans. She knew too much in the investigation of Cathy Durst's disappearance, and so Durst shot her in the back of the head. And she was killed in her Benedict Canyon home. Then the third murder is in Galveston.
Wasn't too thrilled with that Skype connection anyway. We might want to move on into a landline. But we're speaking with Cathy Scott, who's the author of Murder of a Mafia Daughter. The story behind the suspicions Robert Durst murdered Susan Berman. The life and tragic death of Susan Berman. And this Susan Berman woman really did have a very fascinating life. And her death was very tragic, I would agree. Getting hooked up with this Durst character. So let's see, the internet's fine. My internet's fine. It's just Skype once again crapping out on me here. I might have a phone number for our guest. I might just move to that. Let's see if I have one here. I think I do. I don't even know why I tend to keep going back to these Skype connections. I mean, there's so much trouble with them. But I'll pick up here and see if I can get her on the landline and see if that's any better. Calling, and we'll pick up Cathy Scott, who's the author of Murder of a Mafia Daughter. The story.
It's Cathy.
Hey, Cathy, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, we lost each other.
Yeah, I know. We're still on the air, though. But that Skype connection, I'd say, I don't know why I always tell guests to come on Skype, and then there's so many problems with it. You think I'd learn my lesson?
Yeah, it comes on and off.
Oh, you're more comfortable on the phone, or what do you think?
Yeah, phone's good. Let's finish that way. Let's do it that way.
Yeah.
Do the rest of it.
Okay, so now we were talking about Cathy Berman and how not Cathy Berman. Oh my God, God forbid, Susan Berman, because he could be coming for you next. Yeah, you never know with this guy. But Susan Berman, and didn't he mail her some checks right before she was murdered?
He did send her some checks, but I don't think it was unusual for him to do that. I mean, the police may play that up as him trying to pay her off or whatever, but Susan was very much down on her luck, and she was being evicted from her house, and she needed to buy a new car, and he sent her one check, and then a few months later sent her another. She'd originally contacted him. She couldn't reach him. So she called the Durst organization, or I think she mailed a letter to the Durst organization and asked them to get in touch with him because he wasn't picking up his phone. And then he, in turn, sent her a check for $25,000, said it was a gift. And then he sent her a second $25,000. But you had mentioned the cadaver letter, right?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't mention that. But now that you bring up that she contacted the Durst organization. Now, they had a whole bunch of restraining orders against this guy, so they were keeping tabs on where he was because they were afraid of him, or were things were mellow back in those days?
No, this was back in 2000. So in 2000, they were, he'd had sort of a falling out with them because he was supposed to run. He's the senior son. He was the oldest, and he was supposed to. I think he had two other brothers, and Doug was second in line. And instead of putting Robert Durst in charge of the organization, his father, Seymour Durst, put Doug. And so Robert was very unhappy about that and sort of broke away from them. But he still saw them and, was still a part of the family. But he was always, I think that he always creeped them out a little bit, But so it wasn't like he was working every day, because he was on the payroll of the Durst organization. At that point, he hadn't done anything, any stalking. Later, in more recent years, in the past few years, he stalked the family and was actually charged with it. And, one Thanksgiving dinner, he just showed up at his brother's, and these people live in high-priced estates and whatnot, and showed up at their window near the dining room and just stood there as they were eating dinner. So he creeps them out a little. And they have gotten restraining orders against him, but at that point they hadn't. Susan defended him to the bitter end. She was his most loyal friend. He didn't have any friends, basically. He had a wife and then a second wife, and Susan was his best friend, but everybody said he didn't have any friends, even in high school. Yeah, and a little bit of sociopathic behavior, beginning at an early age.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. Now, it's just because while I was researching this today, the guy's fascinating. Because you saw the video of him urinating in the pharmacy.
You can't make that stuff up.
Yeah,
and it was interesting. Didn't you find that interesting? That's gone viral. But he just did that. I think he did that last year. So when he was arrested for Susan Berman's murder, that's still pending in court. That case is still pending. But he walks into the pharmacy. You've got him. They've got tape. So he's coming into it. He's got shorts on, and as he's walking in, I find it interesting. He puts the hat on, baseball cap on his head, right?
Yeah.
It's like a disguise. And he walks up to the counter. He puts his, fanny pack or whatever it is he has, backpack, onto the counter, and he unzips it and whatever. And then he proceeds to unzip his pants and then take a leak all over under the counter and where all the candy is on shelves. Those shelves, the point of purchase, they put those shelves next to counters with candy, and he pees all over it and urinates. And then he just simply lifts his hands and starts taking care of his business. And they filled a prescription for him. And one of the clerks called police. They haven't released that part of it. We haven't seen, police coming in or anything. But it's interesting because when he was arrested in Pennsylvania, where he got his his master's degree in Pennsylvania in Lehigh, he was arrested there at a drugstore, and he stole he was arrested for shoplifting because he stole a sandwich. And then in the Jinx, there's an HBO program, of course, that he was in about him, the Jinx. And in the Jinx, the filmmaker asked him, "Why did you steal that chicken salad sandwich at that drugstore?" He said, "Because I felt like it." And I think that's exactly why he urinated at this drugstore, just last year, is because he feels like it, because he can. I think he's entitled. I think it was like Susan in so many ways that they both were raised in wealth and never given the tools to really survive in society, to have their, to manage their own finances, to drive themselves around, whatever it is, register your car. And there's an entitlement that, some people feel when they're raised in wealth. And I think they both felt that. Susan never did. She was given a lot of money over the years and just squandered it away and died pauper. And Durst just, did things, I think, because he felt entitled. Still does, I think.
Let's go off on a little tangent. Susan Berman. Now, her father owned the Flamingo. How did she die? She got nothing from that?
Oh, no, she got lots from that. No, he didn't own it, but he had ownership in it. He had partial ownership. He ran the Flamingo when Bugsy Siegel was murdered. He took over 15 minutes after. He ran it with him and then took over running it. He ran the skim for the Chicago mob, basically. And in the 40s and 50s, they moved to Vegas in 46. And then he also ran the Riviera at one point, had ownership in the Riviera, ownership in, partial, along with his fellow mobsters, and apartment buildings, bowling alley. So what Susan was given was $5.3 million over a period from the time she turned 21 until she was 30. And she also sold the movie rights to her book Easy Street in the 80s when she was living in New York. And Bobby threw a great big, Robert Durst threw a great big party for her to congratulate her, to celebrate. And Susan would buy everybody at St. Elaine's, which is a really famous, expensive restaurant. She'd buy everybody dinner. She just squandered it away. But she bought a house or two here and there and ended up with nothing. She wasn't good with money. She didn't know how to, she liked to be driven around, even though she had a car. It was falling apart. She didn't know how to maintain a car. She didn't know, you know what I mean? She had parking tickets. She never paid them. There were like 30 parking tickets when she died. And I think that's an indication of sort of an entitlement. Why should I pay that? She just wasn't given the tools that everybody else has, the things that we have to do in life that we don't necessarily like, and I think that Durst is the same way. But she had a lot of money, but she squandered it. And
what year did she get that money? You said $5 million over 10 years. What years was that?
When she was 21, she died. Well, she was born in 46, so it was 21. So what, in 60s, 70s, 80s?
Well, so in the 60s and the 70s, she had $5 million in the 70s.
Well, by the time she was 30, so...
Oh, my God.
Yeah, by the time she was 30, so that would have been in the 80s.
Okay, 80s, or even 80s, $5 million in the 80s.
She died, she died in 2000. Yeah, so it took her a few years to get rid of it. But then she moved in with a man, and she bought a house near... near Nicole Brown Simpson's condo.
Brentwood.
Yeah, in Brentwood, and lived with a man and his two children. And she bought that house. She lost it. And that seems to be the tail end of it. She's always buying people things. I mean, in New York, Susan couldn't just go and buy a pair of leather boots. She bought eel skin and would buy three pairs in different colors. And same thing, she'd buy a sort of silk blouse and buy 5 of them in different colors. So she, custom made things like that. She felt entitled. She felt she just felt entitled. A friend of hers in L.A. who used to go to synagogue with her. She was a member of the Hollywood synagogue, and she told her friend told her when she was, having such financial problems and was trying to freelance a bunch of stories and trying to get a TV series going. She did work on an A&E special, but it's A&E, they don't pay a lot of money for documentaries. And her friend said to her, "Why don't you just go get a job?" And she said Susan was just insulted at the thought of having to go to work, 9 to 5. I mean, she got a job at the San Francisco Examiner straight out of journalism school, and she was there 5 years, didn't get along with the women she worked with. And her dean, I interviewed him. He passed away a few years ago, but I interviewed him for the first edition of Murder of a Mafia Daughter. And he said he always felt it was wrong that Susan, it was unfortunate that Susan had gotten a job straight out of journalism school. He felt she should have had to work a little harder for it. And it just seemed things like that came easy for her, and she, wasn't prepared to handle even, a checking account. It's unfortunate. It's a sad story, I think. I don't think Robert Durst is a sad story. I think Susan Berman's a very sad story.
Yeah, the way you describe it. Yeah, for sure. That's tragic, And to think that, that $5 million gets eaten away because of late fees on parking tickets, 30 parking tickets, that's
Well, she never paid them, in fact, it was her cousin who was named beneficiary. She didn't have anything, but still, somebody has to close out, when you die, someone has to close out your estate,
sure,
no matter what you have. And she had the car that Robert Durst, a used SUV. She paid $7,000 for it from the $25,000 that he gave her, and of that to the $25,000, she had to pay 3 months rent and all the back rent, and then agree to move in March. And of course, she didn't live long enough to move. But her cousin, actually, in breaking down her estate, went and cleared it all out, showed them the death certificate, and then they waived all the parking fees. But she, the reason she did that was they had to sell her car, and in order to sell their car, they had to clear the parking tickets on it. So it was, I don't know, she just took it and stuffed it in the, threw it away or something.
Probably an advisor on the top,
Well, she didn't. Yeah, she didn't fill the. Yeah, she didn't exactly. She didn't fill the responsibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get a parking ticket, you go, oh darn. I mean, I just got something. I drove to L.A. and I couldn't find the toll road booth. I passed it, and so I just got a bill, for going on a toll road without paying. So I'm writing the check and sending it in. Susan, I don't think it would be good if I just stuck it behind my visor. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I wish I had your discipline. I think I'm a little bit more in the Susan category. I hate to admit it a little bit.
Didn't fill, she didn't fill the responsibility, because you get a parking ticket, you get it in the mail. They keep telling you. How can you ignore that? It's like ignoring your IRS bill. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you grow up,
they come after you.
Yeah, well, okay, the IRS. She's worried about IRS. Her dad took over for Bugsy Siegel. I think she has a different kind of perspective in life.
She felt it's funny. She felt, and her life would have been quite different. She always had this yearning for Las Vegas, and it's almost like she didn't develop emotionally. She grew into a woman, and she was very intelligent. She was very quirky, had a lot of sort of phobias, but and she was very much. She and Durst, I think, bonded because they were so similar in that respect. But she never got over losing her parents. She never got past it. Which is so sad. Nobody ever talked about her parents again to her, and she never got past it. So it's like her feet were firmly planted in Las Vegas, and then she spent much of her writing career writing about it. She'd freelance articles. She did the A&E special as a writer, a wonderful A&E special about Las Vegas, one of the best done, and it won some awards. And she was a writer for that, one of the co-writers. But, she was always forever trying to come back to it. When she died, she was trying to, get some series going about the women of Las Vegas, the wives of the casino owners. She was still, trying to get a Showtime series going on that. It's sad. She never got over it, and she was somehow trying to find herself, I think, by writing about Las Vegas.
It is sad. This is a tough town, and it's
a tough town. I mean, I'm gone from there now.
and it seems like a lot of people come here, and their life winds up in tragedy. If they're not involved in gambling, if they're not involved in drinking or drugs or any other fast life, just coming to this town brings like a curse over your life. And I've seen it so many times. Now, do you think?
Well, yeah, and the bad thing about Las Vegas is, it's a 24-hour town, and you've got vice all around you. I mean, you've got strip clubs galore, and you walk into a convenience store, you walk into a grocery store, and you hear bells and whistles and dings because you've got slot machines everywhere. Tobacco slaps you in the face. So you've got people drinking 24 hours a day out on the streets, and I think. And my insurance went down tremendously, by the way, when I moved back to California. But it's just because of the area. So it is a tough town, and people are lured. And if they're lured by the things that are there that are sort of the underbelly of Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's funny because we still have those cigarette machines where you can put $1, $5, $10 in a machine and get a pack of cigarettes out. It's illegal everywhere else in the country.
They'll never do it. They want people to be comfortable in a casino when they're throwing their money away. So they'll never. So you walk in, even if you want to go to a theater that's within a casino. I used to do that periodically, and I always would think, why am I doing it? Because you walk in the door and you're slapped in the face with cigarette smoke. Yeah. Because they want everybody to be convenient and not put out. But yeah, it's not a very athletic town. It's a weird place, but people like it. It was very good to me, but I'm glad I'm gone.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, my kids are about to hit into high school, so we're thinking of getting out of here pretty soon too. Yeah. Okay, I want to take a little commercial break. We're here with Cathy Scott, who's the author of all these different books. Murder of a Mafia Daughter, the story behind the suspicions Robert Durst murdered Susan Berman. Susan Berman herself, a fascinating character. And the second part of that title is The Life and Tragic Death of Susan Berman. And Murder in Beverly Hills, the mob-style execution of Susan Berman, her crime boss father, and the deadly secret she took to her grave. And all these different books about death in the desert, the true story of murder, money, murder, and mystery in Sin City. And
I wrote The Killing of Tupac Shakur and The Murder of Biggie Smalls.
Yeah, I'm going to have a link to every one of these books on my blog. So when they go to the Opera Book blog, it'll be up there for years, so don't worry.
Nice, okay. Thank you.
Don't worry about that. So we'll be right back after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit OppermanReport.com and click on the donate button. Or you can donate directly through PayPal at OppermanReport@gmail.com. We have Mike Ray of InfinityHomePlans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Ray at InfinityHomePlans.com. At InfinityHomePlans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. Now, these are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. You can visit her website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at JocoTammy, JoCaTami or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 for emailrevealer.com, my PI website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta-potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building. If you need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics and Pacific blue Abilene inlay. They have a wonderful book of love letters written to their men in the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azuquina Part 1, Azuquina to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at OppermanReport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing OppermanReport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. Get yourself a free audiobook. Tonight we're here with Cathy Scott, and we're talking about the Robert Durst case. Fascinating, incredibly fascinating, and also this tragic story of Susan Berman. Cathy, do you think Susan saw this coming, or was this out of the blue?
This was this was out of the blue. I mean, she was shot in the back of the head with a 9mm handgun, and whoever shot her, and I do believe it was Robert Durst. All the evidence points to it, circumstantial, but it points to it. She was headed in the hallway into her spare room, and shot in the back of the head, so she never saw it coming. And I think, she was so loyal to him that she'd probably explain away why he killed her. You know what I mean? If she were here today, I think she might defend her own murder.
Really?
That's how loyal she was to him. I mean, she told friends, after Cathy Durst, years later, after Cathy Durst, she still hasn't turned up since 1982, and she wanted to divorce Robert Durst, and then she ended up dead. And Susan told friends that, I know Bobby probably did it. She called him Bobby. And I know Bobby probably did it, but, I forgive him. Her father was the killer. Susan Berman's father was, and she had a wanted for murder poster on her mantle, above her mantle when police went into her house in December 2000 when she was murdered, and after she was murdered. And so I think she accepted that sort of lifestyle. She obviously, forgave her father. She didn't realize he was a killer until she was older and he was dead. But still, she wasn't ashamed of it. She didn't apologize for it. She accepted it. So maybe that's what she did with him when it came to Cathy Durst. And I doubt she would have ratted him out, If she knew something, I don't think she would have talked. But, he obviously didn't have the same loyalty for her that she had for him.
Yeah, I can identify with that because I grew up in Staten Island, and I know that mentality, of all these guys I knew, that their fathers were killers,
Omerta, and they,
Right.
they never rat on each other, and it's an oath. And the kids are the same way when it comes to their parents. Although you've got, when they grow up, a few children of mobsters who became mobsters ratted their own fathers out, but mostly it was to save themselves, And there's one I know that his own father took a contract out on him, and so he ratted him out.
Yeah, we were just talking last night about the Francis kids, the Johnny Francis and Michael Francis, and Sonny Francis ratted out his father. He testified against his own father. Yeah.
This is Frank Calabrese and Frank Jr. I met Frank Jr. at in Las Vegas. They have a mob conference, mob convention, and I met Frank Jr., who was in prison, the same prison as his father, and his father put out a hit on him in prison, for the mobsters, for somebody to do him in prison. As you know, people get killed in prison. And he then, got to the warden and said, "Hey, listen, I want to make a deal." And I think because of what he did, it was something like 40 murders were solved by him turning his father in. And his father, was sentenced, to a very, very hefty sentence before that. But this way they solved some crimes. And then, and then Frank Jr. was taken to another prison, and then he went out eventually. Went out in the protection program and broke away from it eventually. But it's fascinating stuff, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. So you went to the mob convention?
Yeah, I actually spoke at it.
Okay, yeah.
I was one of the speakers. I was on the panel.
Yeah, we had.
I talked about Susan Berman, and that's what I went there for, to talk about Susan Berman before her murder was solved.
Yeah, we had Frank Collard on the show and Denny Griffin when the mob convention was coming up.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they do. I don't know if it was the first year was pretty cool. Kendi Gallo was there. He's one of my sources when I was at the Las Vegas Sun, and then I met him for the first time in person. We talked on the phone. I can't tell you how many times, and emailed back and forth. And he outed himself as a source to me, so therefore I can say it now too. But. He was there, and then Andrew Diamato, nice guys. They've all done bad things, but nice guys. They won't admit it, of course, because there's no statute of limitations on that crime.
Yeah, Kenji's another guy, made a deal, still walking around. No one's ever touched him, But
Kenji's a tough guy. I had dinner with him and his wife last year when I was in L.A., and I mean, he's careful. He's careful, but he's, I don't think anybody will mess with him. He's got a lot going on. A lot of reasons for people not to mess with him.
Yeah, mixed martial arts.
Without going into detail. Well, a lot more than that, too. But, yeah, he's a martial arts, what is he, a black belt or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a nice guy, good guy.
Now back to Susan, though. Okay, now, because it seems like with Robert Durst is that normally wouldn't he dismember the bodies after the murder? Now, how come he didn't do it in this case? Oh,
that was just inconvenience for him. I think he needed to get rid of Morris Black's body. He killed him in Galveston Bay, and who knows why he killed him. But he, I mean, there are a few theories going around about it. But I think he just got in the way of him, and maybe he discovered that he wasn't a mute woman, and he thought he was going to turn him in, and his cover would be blown. And I mean, he's living next door to him. There was just a hallway, a skinny hallway between them, and so Durst says he shot him by accident. And of course, the jury believed him, and he was acquitted of that. But he said he panicked and then he needed to get rid of the body and chopped it up into pieces. He used a chainsaw, so it was a little messy. So he fled the area, and left the apartment all bloody. And I guess he thought nobody would catch him, no one would know it was him. But he was found out, of course, and so no, I think it's, just opportunity. In Susan's case, he shot her in the back of the head and just walked out of her house. In this case, Robert Durst killed Morris Black in his own apartment, in Robert Durst's apartment, so he was stuck with the body in the room.
Okay, but with the first murder, Cathy, the wife, they've never found her body.
Oh, we think she's in the lake near their house in upstate New York. She's probably, it was winter. He went down to, what is it called? Ship Bottom, is it? Ship Bottom, New Jersey? Is that what it's called, or New York?
I don't know.
It's a place called Ship Bottom, I think. And someone called collect to the Durst organization, and the only person who called collect to them would have been him. He did that a lot, checking in with the Durst organization for whatever he needed. I mean, money or whatever it was, and he was working for them at the time, and police believe it was him. Who else? Who else in that area would have called collect to the Durst organization and they would accept the charges? You know what I mean? It was from a payphone, and so they think that her body was put in the water somewhere over there. Also, a really creepy thing about Durst is he and Cathy Durst had a couple of dogs, and they had a dog named Igor, and Igor died mysteriously, and then Robert Durst replaced that dog with another dog of the same breed, and that dog died mysteriously, never of natural causes. He ended up with something like 10 dogs dying, each one dying mysteriously, and each dog was named Igor. He named each one the same name as the first one he and Cathy Durst had. The thought is that he was practicing to kill Cathy Durst by killing his own dog. And then they replaced that dog with another dog named Igor. And it's interesting because he married later, right before Susan died, and when he thought he was going to be arrested probably for her murder, he married a real estate agent in New York, and gave her a power of attorney so that she could handle money for him in case he was arrested. And in one of their phone conversations that was taped while he was in jail after the Galveston Bay arrest, he said to his wife, talking about his brother and all the goings on with him and stalking him, I don't want to have to do another Igor.
Right.
Now using it as a verb. And his wife said to him on the phone, "Careful, we're being taped."
Wow. Now,
is that telling or what?
Yeah, definitely. But now, what's the story with her now? Is she still around? Is she still married to him?
No, she's married to him, and I'm assuming the power of attorney is still in effect unless he has that changed. But she's living with an attorney who was one of Durst's attorneys. So it's hard to say what their arrangement. It's a marriage of convenience, I think, because she can't testify against him because a wife can't, a spouse can't testify against. They can't compel you to do that legally. Testify against each other. She knows a lot, obviously, but she doesn't seem to be as beholden to him as she was in the past. He's made her a very wealthy woman, although she was a very successful real estate agent, but now she's living with one of his attorneys, his former attorney. So we'll see what comes of that. She was in court for the Galveston Bay trial, but she seems to be out of the picture right now. If I were her, I'd run for the hills.
Fascinating. This whole thing is just so crazy.
People get dead when they're around Robert Durst. Yeah. That's a little creepy.
But now, the motive for the first murder of Cathy, you think that was because she wanted a divorce? Because obviously this guy has a taste for murder.
Well, yeah, he does. I mean, they had a really rough, their marriage was, down the tubes. And she was a fourth-year student, medical student, about to finish. And she she told friends, they said, why don't you leave him now? Because she was very unhappy and telling people he was abusing her physically, and she was afraid of him. And she went to a party at a friend's, and it was it was January of 1982, and he yelled at her on the phone and ordered her to come home, and that's the last time she was seen by anyone. He was the last person to see her. And then he reported her missing 5 days later to the Manhattan Police Department when they lived in upstate New York, and it should have been reported there. But he claimed she got on a train, went to their Manhattan, because, I had a Manhattan apartment, that she went to the Manhattan apartment so she could go to school the next day. He never put her on a train. Nobody saw her in New York, Manhattan. And then he reported it to the Manhattan substation, where, his dad built half of Manhattan. The Durst were very famous there and very powerful family. And they never so much as interviewed his neighbors. That they didn't investigate really a missing person case on her. It was the upstate New York police, Westchester police, who later investigated the crime, and they didn't do a very good job of it either. And was it because of the Durst name? We'll never know.
But none of that would have happened. It was because of the ex-wife's brother who really started trying to get stuff going.
Well, yeah, he did, and it was really a detective who in 2000, who, and maybe it was because of the brother, but it was also friends of Susan's. I think it was mostly friends. There was one gal who never did, two women actually, friends, one of Susan's and one of Cathy Durst, and they never gave up, hope that police would go after it. They were, they went through Robert Durst's trash after Cathy disappeared, and hounded until this one detective years later jumped on it, and that was in 2000, and he wanted to interview Susan again. And, Durst got wind of it because it was leaked to the media, and they printed it, and Durst left town. And then Susan ended up dead. Wow. So it's unfortunate. But yeah, his name was Detective Becerra, and he was the one who wanted to take another look at it. But, all those years later, they didn't even search his home until years later, and so it's, what if they had done real police work way back then? Cathy Durst's murder would have been solved, and I believe he did it, and Susan wouldn't have been killed, and Morris Black wouldn't have been killed.
Yeah.
So two people were killed because that murder wasn't solved. So it's unfortunate, because of wealth, that police will back away because of the power. But people don't want to lose their jobs over someone complaining over and over about them, and they'll lose their jobs, and so they save themselves. And the case, it's unfortunate. I hope that doesn't happen much, but it seems to have happened in this case.
Yeah, it seems to happen a lot, and for the average cop, you have less headaches, looking the other way on something like this than you do if you pursue it, and that's just how it is, What are you going to do? Now, not just these three murders that are pretty solid. Morris Black, we can't deny that at all.
Well, Morris Black, he went on the stand. He never denied killing him. He admitted killing him. He said it was an accident, and Morris Black had a gun and came to his apartment. He came home, and Morris Black was in his apartment, and they scuffled, and they had a fight, and lo and behold, Robert Durst, the gun went off, and Morris was killed, and then he panicked and chopped up his body and threw it away. That's what he says. But the head's missing. The head of Morris Black is missing and was never
back
found.
Of the head, yeah.
And that's where we said he shot him in the face. My thinking is he probably shot him in the back of the head the same way he did Susan.
Okay.
But the head disappeared. Who knows where that is?
Now that judge had a couple of incidents, right?
The judge in the case, Chris, what's her name?
Something
Chrissy,
like Chris, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Just Chris. She, was it her cat? Her cat or a neighbor's cat or someone's cat was found dead at her porch, on her porch. It might have been her cat. She thinks Robert Durst did it. There's no proof of it, but, he has had dogs die unexpectedly. So it's, no whatever they call it for an autopsy on a dog. Nothing was ever done to determine how those animals died. So, yeah, some creepy stuff. And then something else creepy happened with her. I can't remember what it was.
He ran into her at a mall, at a shopping mall, and then either a cat's head or a cat without its head wound up on
I think it was a beheaded cat. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was a beheaded cat, which is kind of telling because Morris Black's head disappeared.
Right.
But he obviously chopped it off, but it's grisly stuff. The interesting thing, when Susan was murdered, she had 3 dogs, and the neighbors noticed that her dogs were running in her front yard. The neighbor next door, Mark Karp, a doctor, I interviewed him. He walked me through the crime scene, everything that happened outside. And the door was ajar, her back door was ajar, and her gate was open, and the dogs were running loose. And this is on Benedict Canyon Road, which is a very busy street. And Susan would never have let her dogs run loose, and the neighbor was surprised, but they let a whole day, and the neighbor on the other side as well, and they let a whole day go by, before they reported it. So he woke up the next morning, which was December 24th on Christmas Eve morning, and saw the dogs running loose, went out in front of Susan's house, went to the neighbor on the other side. They had one of her dogs inside their house. The other 2 were still running loose. They saw the gate open, and they could see the back door ajar, which wasn't like Susan at all. Her blinds were always drawn. She was very private. And they called police, and that's when her body was found. So she was killed about a day and a half before her body was found. So interesting that the killer left the back door open because he liked the dogs, or, for whatever reason, he didn't close the door and let the dogs out, which was sort of an interesting side to Susan's story.
So you think he went out of his way to let the dogs out, or you just think maybe he could have just walked out and not cared?
I don't know if he was an animal lover or he didn't want to make any noise when he left, but the dogs slipped out at the same time. I mean, it's amazing that they weren't hit by a car. But it was sort of there were bloody dog prints all over that house.
Oh, God. Okay.
So
the dogs were in the
over.
house. Okay, we know for a fact the dogs are in the house. Okay.
Yeah, and then her body was turned over. She was shot, she fell face down, but her body was turned over, which the person, it's almost in a compassionate way. That's almost what police felt. I mean, I think he had some feelings for Susan. He wanted to stay in touch with her all those years. As much as a person like Robert Durst can feel for another person, he, maybe out of compassion for the dog, some little inkling of compassion, and out of compassion for Susan, he turned her over. But it was so odd, such an odd, and the poor dogs, ran all over her body,
Wait. You're the one. You're the one that loves dogs, not him.
I do love dogs.
That's why you're focused. I says, why is this woman focusing on the dogs? It's because you're an animal rescue person. Okay. It don't make sense.
Well, I include the dogs in it, but it's an interesting, it's just an interesting thing that he did,
okay.
That there was, that police felt that, whoever killed her knew her, and had some compassion for her because whoever it was turned her over.
Well, yeah, and also because of the letter.
Lying in an awkward position. It was a little odd.
Now, he mailed a letter, too, didn't he, to the Beverly Hills Police?
Yeah, mailed, and this, too, they thought the same thing. That was it compassion, and I'm that he didn't want her body to rot in there, that he sent on December 23rd, the killer sends a letter. It's postmarked the 23rd. Her body's not found until the 24th. So the 23rd, a letter is sent to police. It says cadaver inside. It's in block letters, and then lo and behold, in Beverly Hills, it's spelled wrong. and lo and behold, a letter that Durst had written to Susan is discovered. It was written to Susan about a year before she died, on Durst stationery in block letters in Beverly Hills. It was spelled wrong, and that the stepson, was given all of her belongings, and Susan's stepson, quasi stepson, her boyfriend she lived with, in the house she bought in L.A. And lost. She helped raise one of his children later, and one of the stepson mailed, still had that letter and contacted police. That he. I'm sorry, he didn't contact police. That came out in the HBO series.
Oh wow! He never even brought that to the cops. He brought it to the HBO instead.
And that's the cadaver. Yeah, that's the cadaver letter.
Oh my God!
So then, the interesting thing, another side to this, is that this came out. It's evidence.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, it was in a pile of other belongings of Susan's, in a pile of letters and documents and manuscripts she'd written. Because she was always writing a screenplay or a manuscript, a book. Because she wrote several books. She wrote 2 novels and 2 memoirs, and it was in there. Police gave it to him. It means that police had custody of that letter at one point. Did they not let they come through and didn't notice? It matched the cadaver letter.
Wow.
So the stepson has it. Yeah, the stepson has it, and he calls the filmmaker and is disturbed because he was a supporter and defended Robert Durst. Never thought that Susan's best friend Robert would kill her. And he's all upset and crying because he found this letter that matches the cadaver letter to police. And so they confront Durst in the film with that. And then, but the interesting thing is the filmmakers didn't call police right away to give them that. They hung on to that letter, hoping, I don't know, for better ratings or something. When the Jinx came out, the HBO series about Robert Durst came out.
Yeah, amazing. So the cops.
Why did they hang on to that?
The cops have the letter first. They don't even bother to look through this paperwork to match it to another handwriting from their main suspect. Wow!
Right.
The son at least took the time.
That's an eye opener, and that didn't really come out much, But that it's an interesting aside.
Yeah, well, who's putting out the press releases? It's the people, the cops. And
I'm blogging about that actually right now.
Yeah.
But it is I've been writing a blog about it. What did police know and when did they know it?
Oh, where's your blog? Where can you find your blog?
On Psychology Today. It's
Okay.
the Crime She Writes blog. But anybody search my name on psychologytoday.com, they can find my blog.
Oh boy! Now, what do you think about
fascinating details?
Yeah, that's a real eye opener, And this guy's just very interesting. How he's sloppy, and he's gotten away with this he's like 80 years old now, right? 70 something, whatever.
Well, he's 72. Well, that's how he just turned 72. That's how crooks get caught. Is they're stupid. They miss something. They think they're so smart. Robert Durst thinks he's really smart. He is smart. He thinks he's the smartest person in the room, but he's not that smart, is he?
Well, he went to a lot of effort. Like, because I was reading this stuff on Wikipedia about how he's always had fake ID cards. He's always had P.O. boxes and little dummy corporations and stuff. And
he's a pothead to boot. So he's got a drug dealer too. That's probably through his drug dealer is probably how he gets his fake IDs. Because how do you go out and get a fake ID when you're a millionaire?
It's especially in the old days. It was really easy.
Drug dealer.
Yeah. Oh no, your lawyers could hook you up with that. If you can hire a PI or a lawyer, something like that, they can help you get fake ID. That's not a criminal lawyer.
Really?
Oh yeah. In the old days, oh yeah, forget it. They could walk in the old days because
this is just recent. I mean, he had like 30 fake IDs with him when he was arrested for Susan's murder in New Orleans.
Oh really?
So this is and 5 ounces of pot. 5 ounces of marijuana. So he's a weed head. He smokes a lot of weed, but but always has.
Yeah,
And,
I saw that too.
So,
Do you know anything about his pot dealer?
no.
Okay.
I hope that police have contacted him, because I would bet he's the one who's getting his fake IDs from, because, I mean, that would be the way. But, Durst is a weird character. He hangs out, and he's got a house in San Francisco. He hangs out at homeless shelters. He goes to soup kitchens and eats. He rents a hotel in Galveston Bay in a crummy area, a room, one room.
$300 a month.
Place. Yeah, for $300 a month. Why doesn't he rent a nice one? So he has the capability of doing that, but he doesn't always do it. He's got a really nice place in Houston that the cops recently searched. But it's interesting that he likes to hang out at soup kitchens, yet he doesn't give people money. He could help them, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
It's weird that he does that. So he kind of he walks, in mission districts and Skid Row, So maybe that's how he finds his drug dealers.
Yeah, but also too, if he's wandering around those kind of areas, if those people disappear or get killed, or if this guy really is a serial killer for pleasure or whatever, for fetish, whatever it is, those people aren't missed, when they're killed.
Yeah, I don't think it's a fetish. I think it's people get in his way. I think if someone gets in his way, Morris Black, for whatever reason, I think he discovered he wasn't a woman, and he was afraid he'd tell police, because he was living, a man living as a woman as a disguise, because he was running from police. So, but the odd thing is, they weren't able to move further in that case, and so he wanted to have been arrested for Cathy Durst's murder, or killing, disappearance. What he ended up getting caught for was killing Morris Black, and possibly the motive because he thought the cops were after him when they weren't. But just that they wanted to reinvestigate the case, but nothing came of it.
But what about
so it's weird. So I think but there are some cases. There's one in particular in San Francisco where there's a woman missing, and a prostitute saw her, a teenager, 18 or something, saw her get in a car with a man who looked like Robert Durst, and so she disappeared for whatever reason, and it doesn't seem to be sexually motivated. But she was a volunteer at a homeless shelter, and he used to hang out there. That's how he met her. And then she worked at a shoe store, and he visited her at the shoe store.
Right.
And then she gets in a car with a man who looks like Durst in a car similar to the one he drove in San Francisco, and she disappears, never to be found. So he's got, I don't think it's a fetish. I think it's a sociopath.
Okay, but
people get in his way.
How did that girl, what's her name, the one at the homeless shelter, how did she get in his way?
We don't know.
Yeah.
But she disappeared, never to be found again. She's gone.
And there's another one too, an 18-year-old girl, Lynn Schultz, that they suspect as well. Did you look into that?
And that was in Vermont, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Vermont. Maybe he, the girl in Vermont, if he had anything to do with that, she went into he didn't want to work for his father. He, after college, he wanted to start a health food store, and his dad paid and bought him a health food store in Vermont. And this gal came in, she was a college student, and came into a store and went into the store, and then she went outside. She bought a pickle, I think, and she went outside, or a pickle sandwich, stood across the street at the bus stop. Across the street from Robert Durst's health food store was the bus stop. That's the last place she was seen.
Oh, wow.
Maybe she ticked him off, in the store or something. Who knows what his motivation is, but people disappear. And all these years later, that's going to be a tough one to solve, but he is a person of interest in that case now.
And what about this stuff about all those bodies buried in the beach in Long Island?
I don't know that he, that he's a suspect in any of those. I mean, I think he's a serial killer, but I think, you've got to have motive, means, and opportunity, and in each of these cases he has. But I don't put him in that grade of serial killer where they go, get one prostitute, then another, or young girls, and then boom, 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 dumps them in the same place. His murders, if he did them all, are all different, but for the same reason. The motive in Susan was to keep her quiet. I think the motive with Morris Black was to keep him quiet, and with his wife, the motive was, it's not the first time a spouse is killed, a husband or wife, because they were going to leave them.
Well, then what would
and I think in this case it was Cathy was going to leave him, and he was going to be found out as a wife beater, and he killed her.
What would the motive be then of traveling around under all these false IDs all the time and just all this weird traveling? And the soup kitchen.
Well, he had money. He just liked to travel. He just went places. He just, he was bored. He didn't, he wasn't really working. When he worked for the Durst organization, he didn't really work for them. And he just traveled and took off because he could. He had a lot of money. He could go a lot of places. He'd go and stay somewhere. He'd buy a house in San Francisco, and he lived there for a while. His next-door neighbor in San Francisco was his real estate agent. She died, too. But she died. That she was fairly young, not young, but like in her 40s or something, and she died. Died in her sleep or something, they called it, and nobody ever questioned it. But I kind of wonder about that one too. I'd love to see her body embalmed.
Oh boy,
Exhumed, it's interesting stuff about him. People die like flies around him.
Yeah, amazing. But the thing is, okay, I can understand he has money, he wants to travel, but why all the fake IDs and the PO boxes and these little dummy corporations that do nothing?
Well, that all started, the fake IDs, well, probably because he's trying to hide his whereabouts. That all started
after.
Well, because of the Cathy Durst disappearance. He figures everybody's always looking at him. He's been a suspect since 1982, so he's a little paranoid. So he travels, he likes to travel under different names or whatever. I mean, he doesn't want to be found because he thinks the police are after him. Because he killed people.
Yeah, I know that.
So that's the reason, that's the motive, is he wants to hide. But he doesn't hide very well, does he?
No, and it just seems to me, man, that this guy just sticks out to me as someone who's killing for fun or has some extra interest in just murders. And because it's
the animal seems to easily get rid of people. I don't think it's for fun. I think it's because he can. I mean, I think he gets some kick out of it, but and then he likes to mess with people after he's done it, like sending the cadaver letter,
right.
and I don't know, it's weird, and taking Morris Black's head, and then he got on the stand and described the whole supposed self-defense thing, and he's very convincing. He's a liar. He's a certified liar, and very convincing when he lies. I mean, he said in the Jinx, in the HBO series, that was about him. He said he lied on the stand in Galveston Bay, and they caught him in a lie, and in the film when they asked him a question, and he said, "Oh, I thought you said on the stand, blah 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 blah," and he goes, "Well, I lied." He doesn't mind telling you that he lied. And then if you watch the series, in one segment he says, "Of course I lied. Who doesn't lie? Everybody lies." He just takes it for it's what he does. So half of what he says you can believe. It's weird.
Well,
it's
also with that trial, with the Morris Black trial, they had 2 practice trials. His lawyer put on 2 whole trials to practice before that one.
Yeah, because they were polishing him as a liar on the stand.
Yeah, so
he did a very good job. It was very polished, very convincing, and the jury liked him. It was a hung jury. It was 12-1, and finally that final person gave in and acquitted him. And then he, and the gal and I mean it's thing is he was set free and he's a killer, and it's so, and then he went and harassed his family, and stalked them, and I think thank goodness he's behind bars now, because there's one less killer up the street.
Well, he harassed Morris Black's family.
His own family.
Oh, his own family.
Yeah.
Right.
They had to get temporary restraining orders against him. Yeah,
yeah.
he shows up their windows like a peeping Tom. He gets it, and they did it. An interesting thing in the Jinx is they went with him and filmed him when he stood out front his brother's condo or walk up, in Harlem. Harlem is being rebuilt, and so there's this great big place there, and he walks up to it and he goes, well, now that I know where he lives, because he obviously moved, so he wouldn't know where he lived. And then he found out, I think through the filming of The Jinx, where his brother lived, and just stood on the steps, walked up to the door, looked in, walked around it and stuff. He's just messing with them. Then they went to the Durst organization outside and security came and he's just walking around, just messing with them because he can.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch that.
I found that odd that the filmmakers participated in him stalking his family by filming him doing it.
Yeah, well, the filmmakers were sued by the family. The brothers sued the filmmakers because they played some deposition that was supposed to be
yeah, they dropped the suit after
he
was arrested.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they dropped it. Yeah, they participated and they almost were complicit in it because they. Yeah, and it was a little creepy that they actually went with him as he's stalking his family when they had a temporary restraining order against Durst at the time, but he was the film. It was probably Durst's idea. The film was Durst's idea too, right?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, he contacted. They had done the film All Good Things, a made-for-TV movie about Kathy Durst.
Oh, really?
Parents. And Durst liked it so much that he called Andrew Jarecki, the filmmaker, and said, hey, how about if you do a film about me? So they sat down with Durst's attorneys and ironed out whatever agreement it was. I'd love to see that agreement. And they agreed to do a documentary about him. And if you look at the documentary, the first 4 segments, the first 4 episodes are a little sympathetic. Then they get to the 5th and they talk about Susan's murder and the cadaver letter and things like that. And then by the 5th, by the 6th, the final series, they confront him with cadaver letter and his own handwriting. And by the 5th one, though, when they were talking, Durst was arrested after the 5th one, and he had left town because he figured they were going to come after him, I guess. And that's when he fled to New Orleans and was arrested by under an arrest warrant put out by the LAPD, but the FBI made the arrest on behalf of the LAPD.
Yeah, and he was withdrawing like $9,000 a day, and he had maps to Cuba and all kinds of stuff.
Yes, yeah, a map of Cuba and tons of fake IDs, a really creepy rubber mask.
Yeah, right.
Of an old guy with a wig, and he registered under an assumed name. I mean, how do you register under a fake name? I guess he had the credit cards and everything else to go with it, and registered, and he had $40,000 cash because he'd been withdrawing, like $9,000 a day.
Yeah.
With him, so he was getting ready to leave the country. Thank goodness, he was arrested.
Yeah, well, amazing story. Just amazing.
Yeah, fascinating. So it's been interesting covering it. I basically covered it. To write. Wrote a book about Susan to keep her high profile.
Yeah.
Because it was so pitiful that her murder wasn't solved. So I was trying to keep it high profile and keep her story out there. And it's a fascinating story. And I love the old stories about Las Vegas and, the way things used to be. And it was a fascinating story. And lo and behold, it's, turned into this enormous story about Robert Durst now. It's amazing that, he's a household name now.
Right.
Robert Durst has gone viral. So.
Yeah, and just incredible. And I watched that trial, the first one about the dismembering the Morris Black, but you're right. Now it's gotten I guess because of the HBO thing too, when you get the
HBO turned it viral. Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, so I think we covered a lot of stuff. Anything else you want to tell us before we go? Is there anything else?
The second edition of The Murder of Beverly Hills is due out at the end of May, and I'll probably go to New York for, my understanding is I'm going to be doing some interviews there and probably in LA as well. And, looking forward to watching the trial. I'll probably, if he makes it to California, because he's not in very good health, I'll probably be in the courtroom for part of that. And we'll see how he's got a trial in September on gun charges in New Orleans, and we'll see how that pans out.
And any appearances or book signings or anything you want to promote?
Yes, May 30th, Unicorn Bookstore in Ramona, California. We'll be launching Murder of a Mafia Daughter.
Okay, great. Okay, and I'd like to have you back, too, by the way, and we can go over this, The Death in the Desert and the Tupac book as well in the future.
I'd love to.
Yeah, I'd love to, too. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming on at the last second. I know we just booked this early today, and being patient with my technical problems and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, you're welcome. No problem at all. Really appreciate it. And by the way, we're off now, right?
No, we're still on.
Oh, we're still on. Okay, I was going to tell you about linking, but I'll tell you that later. Also, I have a website, CathyScott.com, and anybody can find me on PsychologyToday.com.
Okay, CathyScott.com?
Yes.
Yeah, any other links you want, and PsychologyToday.com, any other links, just send it to me. And by the way, too, the blog, your blog post on Opperman Report, blogspot.com, that's yours forever. So anytime you want to update something, you got a new book comes out, just send me an email, and I'll throw it right on it for you, no problem.
I love it. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, good night.
Okay, bye-bye.
And here we had Cathy Scott. Fascinating information, fascinating book. All these different books she's written here about Robert Durst, Murder of a Mafia Daughter, the story behind the suspicions. Robert Durst murdered Susan Berman, and the life and tragic death of Susan Berman. We take a couple little messages here. I'll play some ads, and then I'll be back with a few little announcements, upcoming guests, and upcoming shows and stuff that we're working on. And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit OppermanReport.com and click on the donate button, or you can donate directly through PayPal at OppermanReport@gmail.com. We have Mike Ray of InfinityHomePlans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Ray at InfinityHomePlans.com. At InfinityHomePlans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. Now, these are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. You can visit her website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at JocoTammy, JocaTami @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 for emailrevealer.com, my PI website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building. If you need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft